Okay, so now we know where the configuration for the Laravel application sits. We're going to start looking at creating a database and getting data from our database rather than hard coding it in our controller. Now in the .env file in the root of the project, you can see here it has some database configuration. So by default, Laravel sets up a MySQL connection with the default values. Now, just to note, you might have changed your MySQL setup, so you will need to change the host and port if you have done this. But I haven't. My local database uses the default, so I can leave these. And I've created a database called First Laravel. The username for that is root, and the password is root. Now, an important distinction to make here, sensitive configuration values such as your database information like the password and username are best going in your .env file. Now this is twofold. Now you don't want to be putting this in the database.php in the config folder, because if you push this into a Git repository, for example, that database information could be viewed by anybody who could see the repository. And as the name .env suggests, these are environment variables. So these will change depending on your environment. So like here in my local stack, my database username is root and my database password is also root. But on my live server, these would be different. So you change your .env file based on your current environment. So let's just have a quick look under project and then config and then database. You can see here this works in exactly the same way as the app config that we looked at in the previous video. So we just have an array and it's the default database and it's looking for a DB connection. If it doesn't find one in the .env, it will just use MySQL. But it's set up now for the default, which is MySQL, and in our .env, our connection is set to MySQL. So what that'll do is it'll return a connection of MySQL. And you can see here all the database credentials for MySQL. So it's looking in the env for the username, password, and database, which we've just set. And it does have a default here, but let's just remove them because we don't need that in there. So just the one thing just to remember is any sensitive information goes in your .env file. So don't be setting a default of like root here, because anyone access to your repository would be able to see these when you commit them in. So let me just remove these for now. So now we have the configuration set up to access our database, and that's coming from our .env file. That database is currently completely empty. It doesn't have any tables on it. And obviously there's no data because there's no tables. The first thing we want to do is actually create our first table. And we do that using a system called migrations. Now migrations allow you to write your table structure in code, and then you can execute that and it will automatically build your database using the migration files. So if we just have a quick look on the database folder, you can see here we have factories, migrations, and seeders. Now we're not going to be looking at the factories or seeders in this introduction course, but I do have other courses that go in depth into these areas of the Laravel applications. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out those videos. So I'm just going to open up this migrations folder, and you can see Laravel gives us some migrations by default. And these are based around a user. We're not going to be using this in the introduction course, but just note when we run the migrations, Laravel will create these tables. Now you can actually just delete these migrations if you don't want them into your database, if you're not using them. But just for now, I'm going to be leaving them in there. But let's just quickly open this create users table so you can actually see what a migration looks like. So here is the default users migration. And you can see inside of the migration, it has a method called up, and it also has a method called down. So when you run a migration, it'll automatically run the up method. And you can see in here, we have a schema facade, and we're calling a create method, and we're going to create a users table, and then this creates a closure. Then inside of here, we create the columns for that users table. So we're creating an ID, which is an auto incrementing ID. And then we're setting a string of name, a string of email, which must be unique. We're creating a timestamp, which could be null. We're also creating a password, a remember token, and then timestamps. Now these helper methods are built into Laravel, and you'll probably want to put timestamps on every table. This will just create a date time column with a created at and an updated at column. So that's just a nice shortcut so you don't have to type them out on all of your migrations. So let's create a migration for our posts. So over in our terminal again, let's just run php artisan so we can see a full list of the artisan commands. And then we'll just scroll up to the make section. And you can see here we have make migration. And this creates a migration file. Now a little tip, if you want to know more about each of these commands, what you can do is, let me just clear my screen. You can do php artisan make migration. And then as a last parameter, you can type in -- help. And then this gives you all the details on how you can use the make migration command. So if you're ever unsure of the parameters you need to pass, use the -- help, and then it'll give you a full list here. So let's create our first migrations. So I'm just going to clear this. I'm just going to press up on my keyboard to get that command back. And then as a final parameter here, we're going to name this migration. Now you want to name the migration in a way that you can understand what it is. So be quite verbose about this. So I'm going to say create and then underscore posts table. And then I'm just going to hit enter on this. And you can see there, Laravel has created a new migration for us in that folder, which is database migrations. It creates a timestamp at the start and then the name of our migration. So let's open this up now in our code editor. So under project, database migrations, we can now see our new migration here. Now, because we've named this migration in a certain way, Laravel has already assumed what we're trying to do. So it already knows we want to create a post table. And it's got that because we named our migration create post table. So Laravel has worked out that, and it's given us some boilerplate code to get started. So that's a really clever feature when creating the migrations through the artisan command line. So in our up method here, let's create a new column, and we're going to say table. And this is going to be a string. And there's a load of different column types you can put here. We'll jump over to the documentation in a minute and I'll show you those. We're going to name this column title. So the title of the post. So that's our up method that will run when we run the migration. But also there's the down method, is the reverse of what we've done here. So we created a post table, and in the down method, it drops the table posts. Now this is what's really powerful about migrations. So you can make a change to the database. So that could be creating a table, or even just adding a new column onto a table. So once we've run this post, we could create a new migration to add another column to the post table. And then the down method does the reverse. So you could make that change on your application and you might find out that it breaks something, or you want to make a change to that. You can then reverse the migration. So it would then delete that post table and put your database back to how it was before the migration was run. And this is a really powerful feature of migrations. So now what we want to do is actually just run this migration so we can have access to our post table. So back over in our command line, this is quite easy to do with artisan. So we can just say php artisan migrate, and then we can run this. And you can see there that runs, and it runs through all of our migrations. So it's done the default ones here, but it's also ran our create post table migration. So let's have a look in our database now. So I'm just using dbeaver here, but you can use any database browsing tool that you like. And you can see now we have all of our tables, and we have our post table. So let's open this up. And you can see in here, it has our ID column, our title, and our 2 timestamps. So Laravel has been able to create that just from that migration. Now, anyone else who wants to run your application, or even when you come to install your application in a live environment, you can just simply run php artisan migrate, and it will completely build the database exactly how you've got it locally. So that's the true power of migrations, and there's a lot more to migrations than what I've just shown you in this video. So don't forget to jump over to the documentation and take a look at the migrations. Let's just have a quick look at that now. You want to come down to database and then migrations. You can see here quite detailed documentation about migrations, and we're just going to have a look at columns for now. So let's have a look here and then scroll down to the available column types. So as you can see, we use string, but you've got all of these column types open to you. So no matter what type of data it is you're trying to store, you can create the migration with the correct column type, and the Laravel migrations will handle all of this for you. So as I said, migrations can be quite a complex concept, so just jump in the docs and look over it. But for the purpose of this video, because it's just an introduction course, we've covered all the basics there that you need to get going in creating and dropping tables. Now, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. That'll help massively. Also, if you subscribe, turn on the notification bell and you'll get notifications when future videos in this series are released. And again, all the code will be on my website to download. So you can head over to penguindigital.co.uk and I'll drop all the links in the description.